Hashtag I can confirm is one of the biggest hashtags this week. But in my hands, I have a book I picked from the Ministry of Finance, and it's a Know Your Budget kind of pullout, a summary of the 2017-18 budget. But this evening, we are talking about the 2018-2019 budget. And in the house, I have Mr. Julius Kapwepwe. He's the Director of Programs from Uganda Debt Network. And as usual, I have Matan Kwagala. Should I call you, okay, you're a journalist, but I want to say something different, just for the sake of it. A Ugandan. Yes. You're welcome on the show.
Thank you.
Let me start with you. I've been wanting to have a one-on-one with you for a very long time. But the question, when someone hears Ugandan Debt Network, they'll ask you this: how are we standing with our debt as Ugandans?
Okay, thank you. The Bank of Uganda, or government of Uganda, mainly through Bank of Uganda, has oftentimes indicated that Uganda's kind of total debt stands at about $11 billion. In Ugandan shillings, that's a hefty sum of trillions of shillings, or hundreds of thousands of shillings. The IMF also gives about the same figure, 11 thereabout billion dollars. In our various assessment and analysis as Uganda Debt Network, we have quite a different picture, and that picture for us, when we've done the computation, Uganda is in excess of $15 billion. We have got another component of debt which we can call kind of recoverable debt, particularly in respect to the oil and gas exploration in the Arbatine area in Western Uganda. That I am Company X, I stake my money into exploration. Let's dig down here in the ground, which requires a lot of money, hefty capital. If we don't find the mineral, the oil in this case, I'll lose my money. If we happen to find that oil on commercial terms, and upon production and sale, the revenues that are generated, out of the revenues that are generated, I'll have to first pick off the portion of what I had invested in before you, government of Uganda, and people of Uganda can touch on that money. The details of the modalities of how that happens can be discussed, but so far in Uganda, through Bank of Uganda records, we are in billions of shillings. So all that constitute debt, which at times government is shy to talk about, and perhaps rightly so. It would seem alarming to Ugandans. But also the other last component that I could talk about debt is that government and the International Monetary Fund and a number of these institutions mainly talk about what we call outstanding, disbursed and outstanding debt. Disbursed is the money that you have received off your debt bracket, but outstanding is what was already in existence. You are adding on that money. But I'll give just a quick example. If I go to a circle in our neighborhood there in the village, which many Ugandans are quite accustomed to, I borrow some 80,000 shillings. That money is counted against me. It is put on my account, say in my bank account, because it has been approved. It is up to me to go and pick that money from my bank account and use it to what I wanted to what I borrowed it for, or anything else anyway, because it is my money by that time. Now, to the extent that out of the 80,000 into my bank account, I have so far picked only 40,000 is the disbursed money that I've used. So, but government doesn't give us the other picture of the other 40,000 that has remained against my name in the bank account. So you can choose to pick it and use it as a government or as a people of Uganda, or you don't. But for me, the lender, I am counting that money, and I can assure you when time comes, at time of payback, the interest is calculated against the entire 80,000 that was given to you. So that is an disbursed debt.
Let me read a tweet from Uganda Debt Network. They say over 28% of the budget allocations is going to debt servicing. This is a big percentage. Government should borrow responsibly and ensure returns. What do you get from that tweet? Over 28% of the budget allocation is going to debt servicing.
I think the problem has not been the budget of sorts. The problem has been the mismanagement of the finances when the finances come into government. Because if every year we have a budget and the budget promises a lot of things and those things are not fulfilled, what does that show? It shows that the people who are holding public offices are not prudent, are not being accountable for the monies they get. And then we just have an increasing budget, but not the works on ground. You can look at the theme for this year's budget, industrialization for job creation, right? But then if you look on the market today in Uganda, we have so many domestic businesses that are not formalized, right? Yet if they were formalized and the monies are used in a good way, they would be encouraged to pay taxes, right? So instead of looking for more money, more funders, more donors, we need more money, whatever we have, are we efficiently using it to benefit the Ugandan? I think that's the question that every Ugandan, every stakeholder should be looking at. How efficiently are the finances being used?
And maybe I should also quickly chip in on that particular component and give Ugandans a bit of picture. A number of us actors are not against borrowing. In fact, we think borrowing is one of the windows, can be one of the windows to spur our economic growth, but also the economic development. To give an example, if you are looking at the financial year 18-19, that we are going to, it hasn't started by the way, it is going to start at 1st of July. So we are still in the current financial year at 17-18. It's not gone. But in the forthcoming financial year, we expect to collect our own domestic revenues up to the tune of approximately 16 trillion. The budget itself is 32.7 trillion. So that's about a half that you are collecting to be able to finance your ambitions. Of the 16, you can only count on the money that is yours, the 16 trillion, therefore. 10.6 trillion is going to go to debt servicing, debt repayment. We are not saying that 10.6 trillion is going to clearing off your debts. No, it is going to go to, Uganda would call it, to lessen the burden a bit. 10.6 trillion out of 16, how much is remaining? It's not 6, it's certainly less. Now that remains is where we are counting on mainly from our own perspective and our own generated resources, service delivery outcomes, outputs and outcomes, that you have health facilities functioning, that you have, but within that there is also, there is the recurrent budget or recurrent expenditure, and then development expenditure. Generally, citizens, you and I, mainly benefit directly from the development side of the budget. That recurrent expenditure added up comes to about 70% of the remaining budget of the 5 point something. So the actual service delivery, that except for education, people's salaries, teachers, because teaching is the core business of the education sector, that is a development budget. But generally for all the others, whether it is to fund the RDCs to move around or to all these that we see, burial, so and, all that ideally benefits you and me, an individual, the direct benefit. The salary comes to me, it does not come to the people of Uganda. Of course, at level of details, you can talk about the trickle down and all this, but directly that comes to me. It is that school, it is that road which has been fixed this financial year that helps me as a Ugandan. alongside other Ugandans. So the other aspect we need to interrogate is that of our assessments over the last 3 or 4 years have indicated that while around the financial year 2011-12, about 500 billion was being lost in Uganda through corruption, through stealing of public resources, that tone and tune has since increased to about 3 trillion shillings. And that money continues to be lost. So you need to be careful exactly whether we shall have what kind of quality and quantity of service delivery outcomes for Ugandans we shall have.
Let me read a tweet from Uganda Date Network. You say, if you want to address the problems of ordinary Ugandans, there must be focus on agriculture as it employs most Ugandans. The budget does not address the concerns of the ordinary Ugandans. Let's head for a short break, and when we get that, I'll be talking to these gentlemen about that. I can confirm that the President of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, put on his first ever fitting coat just the other day when the Prime Minister of Ethiopia visited and gave him a very colorful suit jacket. He looked like A. Bryant so in one of his shows. Better still, he looked like our very own Joram Muzira. I can also confirm that someone went and photoshopped a picture of the president wearing a shoe and made him look like he's wearing a boat. I saw a tweet on Twitter and someone was saying, the shoe is longer than Museveni's reign. Let's head for a short break. When we get back, we're still talking the UG Budget 18, plus also how Ugandans are going to be affected by the debt that we are constantly accumulating. Stick around.